My husband works a 40-hour work week doing HVAC. In his free time, he plays games and listens to music, which I have no problem with because I know he needs to decompress. He does regularly help with cooking and cleaning, as he is a bit of a clean freak. Anyway, in this economy, we are barely scraping by. We have 3 young children that I stay home with. We don't have much family. The only person I trust to watch my kids was my mother-in-law, but she recently had back surgery and is in physical therapy. It's honestly cheaper to stay home with them, and I refuse to send them to daycare after hearing the horror stories. Even though staying home with 3 kids can be a full-time job in and of itself, I constantly feel like I do not do enough. Maybe a trauma response? But when I see him working all week complaining about our finances, I decided to figure something out. At first, I would do DoorDash, but there are not enough hours in the day. After he gets off, he wants to decompress. On the weekends, it is his day off, so I could not really rake in enough money to make a difference. He tells me DoorDash is not worth it and does not pay much, but I am unable to work longer than 3 hours because he cannot handle the toddler. I am unable to do it every day because he complains. I actually enjoy it because I get a break from the kids and I do not really have to think, just complete tasks. So I found a nanny job instead. It's not bad. I am able to take the kids with me. I am incredibly lucky to have found someone who is okay with it and sees it as something positive because it's like a play date. Originally, the listing was for 1 week, 8 10-hour days in a row, because the mom is going on vacation and the dad works from home. We did a trial run where they met us and I watched their daughter for a few hours. They loved us and started using us 3 days a week so they could get a break. I am currently on day 6 out of 8. The kids have vacation Bible school for 3 days starting today, so he let us leave early. He's flexible. So today I worked from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. with all the kids and went to vacation Bible school until 8 p.m. and worked in the nursery. I have to do this for 2 more days. When I got home, the toddler was fussy, so I tried to put him to sleep. I still nurse him and he just wasn't falling asleep. So we decided to take a break. I found out my 8-year-old was still in the shower, which was over 20 minutes. I got frustrated because this is an ongoing thing with him. I asked him if the water was even still warm. He said yes, but he looked guilty. I felt sweaty and gross from chasing after kids all day. I walked away. The toddler chased after me and wouldn't stop crying. I could feel my sanity slipping and started crying too. I started venting and said I am tired and sweaty from chasing after the kids all day. I am touched out. He said he understands. I muttered under my breath, "No, you do not," before I could stop myself. That's when the argument started. He started talking about how he worked 8 years in the hot sun all day and how no one asked him how his day was. Mind you, I always ask him, but I had not had a chance today. He said he just wanted to decompress and play his game. I said I just walked through the door and haven't had a chance to breathe. A lot was said, but he justified his gameplay by saying, "At least I am not in the streets cheating on you." When he was complaining about how hard his day was, I told him that he always makes it a competition. I'm never allowed to complain because he always has to say how much harder he has it. He told me I do the same thing. I do not remember doing that. He said it must be my forgetful attention deficit hyperactivity disorder brain. Regardless, I know I do not start arguments over it. He said he would much rather quit his job and stay with the kids all day. This is the same man who will tell the 8-year-old to watch the toddler. I feel like it is in his personality to half-heartedly do things that do not matter to him. He is always late to work. I do not know if that is relevant to paint the picture. He is not a morning person and gets angry at little things. I feel like he is selfish, but I get told I am selfish. He is late to literally everything. Family movie night, any outing ever. Speaking of outings, if I want to plan a family outing, which we rarely have, and that breaks my heart for our boys, he will reluctantly agree. And then the morning of, he will complain about how he does not know why he agreed to it, and he wants to go home. I do not know why our relationship is like this. It is like the only time we are happy is when we are watching a show together, or if we go out for one of our birthdays or anniversaries. We do not do random date nights. I feel like our relationship is dying. I want our boys to see a healthy relationship and replicate it one day. It feels one-sided. I have gotten to the point where I feel like my feelings are not safe to talk about, and I cannot trust him with my heart. After our argument, I heard my 8-year-old crying. He feels like he started our argument because of our long shower. My heart broke, and I reassured him that it wasn't his fault, and it was a me problem. My husband walked in and grabbed the toddler and told me to take a shower. So I did, and cried my eyes out. I am putting the toddler to bed again, and he said when I am done he wants to talk. I do not know what is going to be said, but I am tired of having these arguments where I feel like we are not equals, like I do not deserve to decompress ever, not even for a day. I am considering leaving at 8 a.m. on Sunday and not coming back until 5 p.m. and see how he feels. He probably wants to make up. I just want to end the cycle. If we keep going like this, one day I am going to stop crying about it and emotionally check out. I do not want that. I love my husband. We cannot afford counseling. I try to communicate, but it does no good. Any advice? Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. I would honestly make up with him and still leave at 8 on Sunday and not come back until 5, and then say, I thought you said you'd rather stay at home. This was a trial run. Your nannying money needs to stay in your account only if you never get a break or have time to decompress. Then he doesn't get that money. Also, just throwing this out there, which you can say to him if you do divorce. His decompress time would be limited by having to actually parent by court order, and you would get time to decompress. Comment 2. He isn't decompressing. He's lounging around and lashing out. A lot of this reads like you want to fix things, and he wants to be a martyr. Tell him to climb down off the cross. You need the wood. If the argument is unproductive and he starts lecturing, cut him off and say he's not your superior. He's supposed to be your partner. Now for the update. It's been about 3 weeks since that huge fight with my husband. I guess you can say things have been pretty quiet since then. After thinking about it a lot, I decided to take a day away and let him handle the kids alone. I planned a visit to my sister's house for the day. She's about an hour away, and she's got a big yard for the kids to run around in. I thought it would be a nice change of scenery for everyone. So the night before leaving, I packed a bag and set alarms for the kids' routines. You know, the usual stuff. Wake up, brush your teeth, eat breakfast, get dressed, all that stuff. When I mentioned my plans to my husband, he seemed surprisingly relieved. Like, I didn't expect him to be super happy, but this was a whole new level of, thank God you're leaving. Anyway, I left early the next morning before the kids were even awake. My kids had a blast at my sister's place. They were playing in the yard, making up games and just being kids. It's nice to see them so happy. That evening, my husband texted me asking how the day was going. It was a simple message, but it felt like a good sign. Later that night, my sister's husband joined us for dinner and casually asked how my husband was doing. My sister seemed to be avoiding the topic, which I found a bit strange. Like, is there something I'm missing here? After dinner, my sister pulled me aside for a private chat. She expressed some concern about my husband, hinting that he seemed distant. I shrugged it off, thinking it was just a busy work week for him. But part of me wondered if there was more to it. The next day, I returned home and found the house unusually quiet. The kids were glued to the TV, and my husband looked completely exhausted. He mentioned having a long day, but he seemed so distracted. While we were cooking dinner together, we started talking about our week. He brought up my sister's comments about him being distant. I didn't think much of it, but he seemed really bothered by it. The conversation escalated into another argument, with both of us raising our voices. Then, out of nowhere, our 8-year-old son walked in looking worried and asked if we were fighting again. My heart just sank at that moment. We both paused and agreed to take a break and cool off before discussing it any further. A few days later, we had a family dinner with the kids, trying to keep the atmosphere light. They started asking about a family vacation, which was random but sweet. My husband suggested a weekend trip, and the kids were all for it. I hesitated for a second because, let's be real, finances are tight, but I agreed to consider it, thinking it might be good for all of us. We decided to plan a trip to a nearby beach, keeping it budget-friendly. The night before the trip, my husband got an unexpected phone call. He stepped outside to talk, and I felt this knot in my stomach. When he came back in, he seemed agitated but didn't share any details. I didn't push it, but I was definitely curious about what was going on. So, we went on the trip, and the kids had a great time playing in the sand. On the last night, we had a bonfire, and my husband seemed distant again. I gently confronted him about the phone call, and he revealed it was a colleague needing help with a project that could affect his job. We returned home, and I could sense that the underlying issues still weren't resolved. Days passed, and while the kids were happy and enjoying life, the couple's communication was still strained. We weren't arguing or anything, but we weren't exactly having deep conversations either. I just hope we can figure this out before it affects our family more than it already has. Edit. It's been a few weeks since we went on that family trip. Things have stayed pretty calm, but I can feel that we still have a lot of work to do. My husband and I haven't had any big arguments, but we haven't had any real talks about our relationship either. We're just kind of coexisting right now. The kids seem to be okay, but our 8-year-old still gets worried when he sees us arguing. I've been trying to reassure him that everything is fine. I think we need some family counseling to help us all communicate better, especially for the kids' sake. It's time to take that step. Am I the idiot for refusing to dump my boyfriend because my parents are bigots? My boyfriend, who is 23 years old, is an Egyptian Muslim, and I, who am 22 years old, am an Armenian Christian. We're both living in Toronto, but my parents are based in Dubai. We're very happy together and have even planned to get married, but my parents are extremely opposed to our relationship. Armenians place a strong emphasis on family and culture, and marrying within the community is seen as very important. My parents have made it clear that they prefer me to marry someone Armenian, or at least, if not an Armenian, from a similar culture. My brother is dating a Canadian Greek girl, and while my parents make occasional snarky comments, they have accepted her. However, when I told them about my boyfriend, their reaction was extremely negative. I've had a difficult relationship with my parents growing up, as they can be very controlling. This led to my brothers and me feeling distant from them, and even being uncomfortable when we're in the same room or on a call. Despite this, I've accepted that I can't change them and have tried to live my life as best as I can. But when it comes to my boyfriend, things have escalated. They have a deep-seated prejudice against Muslims and have expressed horrific views about Islam, such as claiming that I would be forced to wear a hijab and that women have no rights, and much worse. After many arguments, I managed to arrange a meeting between my parents and my boyfriend. It was a stressful experience for me, even though my boyfriend felt it went well. My parents were respectful. My dad maintained a conversation, but my mom stayed silent, which made me feel embarrassed and disappointed. They said he's smart and ambitious, but still insist that he is not right for me. After this experience, I distanced myself from my parents for a month. They realized what was happening, which led to a temporary stop of arguments. But now that I'm back in Dubai for the summer, the arguments have started again. As a last resort, my boyfriend reached out to my dad as a way of getting to know each other better, but my dad ignored the attempt and said the text seemed concerning. I'm conflicted. If we break up, we'd both be devastated. If we stay together, my boyfriend and his family will continue to face my parents' prejudice. I never wanted cutting off my parents to be an option, but it seems like I'm left with no choice. This is an extremely difficult decision to make despite my complicated relationship with them. Am I being selfish for staying with my boyfriend and putting him through this ongoing stress? Or would it be selfish to leave him, not fighting for our relationship, hoping he can find someone who doesn't cause this much stress? Are my boyfriend and I being delusional about us actually working out given the circumstances? Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. You should live your life for yourself. You owe your parents nothing. They chose to have you, not the other way around. At some point in your life, you will have to make choices for yourself. They got to choose who they married, and you should have the same right. Before you marry this man, You need to know for sure if you will be expected to follow the rules of his religion or not. This is a really big deal in Muslim culture, and before you get stuck, you better take a good look at what you are getting yourself into. Look at his family and how the women are treated. Your parents are not wrong for being concerned, but in the end, the decision is yours. If your parents decide they cannot handle it, that is their choice. You cannot seriously think that your parents should help you decide who to marry. Comment 2. Given that you already live separate lives in different cities and have a history of a tumultuous relationship, I believe the decision becomes clearer. Why would you sacrifice your own happiness and well-being for a connection that consistently causes you anxiety and stress? Your parents have evidently shown a lack of support in the past, so why prioritize accommodating their prejudiced views? You deserve to prioritize your own happiness and mental health. It might be time to establish stronger boundaries or consider reducing contact with them. Now for the update. I got back from Dubai and it was not the best. My boyfriend picked me up from the airport, and as soon as we got home, he surprised me with dinner at our favorite Egyptian restaurant. We were talking about how awful my parents were being, and he was concerned about me. He asked if I was okay, and I told him I was fine, but I was really not. I was stressed. The next day, my parents called me and demanded to know when I would be bringing him home for a family visit. I was shocked. I thought they really hated him. I told them I would come by for dinner. I figured it would be a good way to ease the situation. I spent about 5 hours in the kitchen cooking traditional Armenian dishes. The evening came and my boyfriend came over early to help set up, but he was nervous. I was nervous too. My parents came over and the atmosphere was polite but awkward. During dinner, my dad made a comment about how he expects me to marry an Armenian man. My boyfriend tried to join the conversation, but my mom was just sitting there, quiet. It was like she was ignoring him. An argument broke out when my mom started questioning his career plans, suggesting they didn't align with my future. I defended him and said he had ambitions that differed from their expectations. My dad interrupted and brought up our heritage and traditions. My boyfriend tried to lighten the mood with a joke, but that just made them more annoyed. I stormed into the kitchen to collect myself and calm down. I overheard my parents talking about how they feared for my future if I continued this relationship. My boyfriend came in after me, and we had a tense moment about the dinner. My parents called me back to the table and demanded I choose between my boyfriend and my family. He took my hand and signaled that he would support me no matter what. I stood firm and told them I loved him and I wouldn't abandon our relationship. I guess that's where things turned really bad. My mom stood up and said she was disappointed in me and left the dinner early. My dad followed her, and like that, they were gone. I was left sitting there with my boyfriend. The next day, I got a text from my brother. He supported my relationship and wanted to meet my boyfriend. I was really happy to hear that from him. A few days later, my parents reached out again, insisting on a family gathering for my brother's birthday. I decided I would attend, but I insisted my boyfriend come along. At the birthday dinner, my parents were polite but kept their distance from my boyfriend. After cake, my dad brought up the topic of marriage again, directing it at me. My boyfriend stood up and confidently stated his intentions regarding our future together. My brother defended me, reminding my parents of the importance of acceptance. Then my parents finally agreed to give the relationship a chance on the condition they would meet again. I guess that's a win. Edit. My parents still have a long way to go in accepting my boyfriend. Right after he left that night, they criticized his attire and demeanor, questioning if he truly respected our culture. They also made it clear that they didn't want me to spend the night at his place, which led to another argument. My brother, however, has been really supportive. He even asked my boyfriend to join us for a game night, something he hasn't done before. Am I the idiot for confronting my husband after catching him at a bar with a young woman? I'm a 34-year-old woman married to a 36-year-old man for almost 5 years, together for 9. We just had a baby 10 months ago, and ever since we have entered the roommate phase, meaning little to no interactions and no intimacy. However, intimacy has always been an issue in our relationship. My husband had a traumatic intimacy event as a teenager where rumors involved authorities, and ever since, he has had a bad relationship with intimacy. Throughout our relationship, I have found browser history of intimacy videos and text messages about other women to his male friends. I was not happy about this and often pointed out our relationship lacked intimacy, and I believed his masturbation habits were detrimental to our relationship. I've had lots of conversations about how it made me feel and tried many different ways to initiate intimacy, but was often rejected. Of course, there is more to our relationship than intimacy, but since we've had our baby, I've been feeling very lonely and not desired. When I was 3 months postpartum, I was begging my husband for some attention and some time for us, but he would rather have downtime and stay at work late at a bar or watch television and play video games in another room, and told me he didn't want to come to our room where the baby and I were just yet. Our baby needed a dark room in the evenings, and since he was done working around 6 p.m., evenings were all we had to hang out. Then at 4 months postpartum, I found out he was watching hours of sensual videos every day and night. With the hormones and daily sacrifices to be a good first-time mom, I lost it. I was very upset that while I was attending to our baby's needs at night, he was looking at other women. That's when our relationship took a steep decline. He apologized a lot and was scared to lose me, but then soon after I found more videos in his history and brought it up. This time he was defensive and angry with me for snooping, and a few weeks later, we decided to start therapy. He started a new job during that time, and still snooping, I noticed he looked up social media accounts of a young female coworker and deleted the evidence right after. I brought it up to him and he got very upset and told me she's just a coworker and I am out of line. I never shook that feeling that something wasn't right. He was staying at work and started working out and dressing better, which is out of character. Tonight, I asked him if he's interested in someone at work, and he admitted he's been trying to fight his feelings for her. We have couples therapy tomorrow, and I don't know if I'm allowed to feel so upset about all this. He has recently been looking up how to know if women are attracted to a man, and I thought that was strange, but decided not to think too much into it. But now I understand he's been trying to figure out if she likes him too. She's a 20-year-old woman. How do I even begin to share with our therapist this? I'm worried I will be told crushes are normal, and because he didn't cheat, from what he told me, it's not a big deal. Any advice appreciated. Now for an update, I just want to thank everyone for your feedback and comments. I'm new to using Reddit and did not expect anyone to take the time to read this long post and give your opinion. Thank you again. Now for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. So he's actively looking for a way to cheat on you. Honestly, he sounds exhausting. I would rethink my relationship. I see a pattern and it's now escalating. Make a plan. Get your ducks in a row because you have a baby. Comment 2. Are some men really this entitled that they are actively telling you that they're interested in someone else and you don't think it's time to walk away? I would be out of that door so fast. Now, for the update. A week after couples therapy, I sat in the living room with my husband. I could feel the awkward silence between us after our last session. We had talked about his feelings for the coworker, but it felt like nothing really changed. The therapist was trying to get him to see how wrong it was to have a crush on a younger coworker, but it was like talking to a wall. I decided to take a break and visited my parents for the weekend, hoping for a distraction. During dinner at my parents' house, my mom casually mentioned that she saw my husband at a local grocery store with a woman. My heart sank as my mom described the woman as young and attractive, the same age as the coworker my husband had feelings for. I brushed it off, thinking he could just be grocery shopping, but unease crept in. On the drive home, I checked my husband's location on my phone, which he had shared with me for safety. I noticed he was at a bar a few blocks away from our home, which he never mentioned he was going to. After putting the baby to bed, I decided to go by the bar, feeling a mix of anxiety and determination. The bar was dimly lit, and I spotted him through the window, sitting at the bar next to a young woman. The woman leaned in closely, and I felt a knot in my stomach as I watched them interact. I couldn't hear their conversation, but saw them laughing and looking at each other in a way that felt too intimate. I pulled out my phone and took a picture of the scene for proof. Feeling overwhelmed, I left the bar without confronting them, not wanting to cause a scene. Back home, I showed the picture to my sister, who happened to be staying over, hoping for support. Her expression shifted from concern to disbelief as she looked at the photo. My sister suggested confronting my husband, but I hesitated, unsure of how to handle it. The next day, I waited until my husband got back from work to confront him about the bar incident. He seemed caught off guard when I brought it up, denying anything inappropriate happened. We argued about trust, and he deflected, bringing up how I hadn't been affectionate since the baby was born. Frustrated, I mentioned the coworker, prompting him to become defensive and say I was overreacting. I decided to take a step back and talk with my parents about the situation. At my parents' house, I shared the latest developments, and my mom suggested we have a family dinner to discuss things. The idea of a family dinner felt like a way to gain support, so I agreed, inviting my husband. At the dinner, my dad made a toast to family, and the mood felt forced as I tried to gauge my husband's demeanor. During dinner, my husband cracked jokes to lighten the mood, but I remained tense. I gathered the courage to bring up the bar incident again, and this time my husband brushed it off as nothing. My dad stepped in, sensing the tension, but my husband snapped, saying it was a private matter. After dinner, my husband stormed out, claiming he needed a break from all the drama. I followed him outside, where we argued heatedly on the driveway, with my parents listening from the door. He accused me of invading his privacy by checking his location and said I was being paranoid. The argument escalated, and I felt my voice rising, drawing the attention of my parents. He finally left, saying he needed time to think about our relationship, leaving me standing in the driveway. The following days were filled with tension as I waited for him to come home, but he didn't come back until late. When he arrived, he seemed distant, and the atmosphere felt colder than ever. I decided to take my sister's advice and push for clarity, demanding we have a serious talk that night. We sat in silence before I finally asked him directly if he was seeing the coworker. He hesitated before saying he was just confused, but the words felt empty. The conversation ended without resolution. I decided to prioritize my well-being and started researching options for myself and the baby. Edit: I appreciate the support. Some clarifications. My husband and I were each other's firsts, and we dated for 5 years before marriage. The coworker works in his department. I don't know if anything physical happened, but the emotional part is troubling. I'm exploring options for myself and the baby. If you like this video, you'll probably like these too. Also, while you're here, please consider subscribing. It's your support that keeps this channel alive and allows me to make better and longer videos. Have a great day.